Welcome to Lift Your Future, a podcast that teaches you coping skills through stories, methods, and proven techniques to improve relationships and outcomes in your personal and professional life. I'm Nicole Winkler, a licensed therapist and executive coach. On this podcast, we'll share relatable life experiences designed to help you grow. I will provide easy, practical ways to develop thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to impact your life, both personally and professionally. My goal is simple: to help you lift your future. Hello, and welcome back to Lift Your Future podcast. Today, we're going to talk about an important topic to me, which is forgiveness. And we're going to talk about the 5 W's of forgiveness, some myths about forgiveness, and some tips about how you can actually achieve forgiveness and work on it with yourself or with someone else. So first and foremost, I want to say forgiveness is a skill. It's a skill that you develop for yourself. You learn how to do it. And like anything else, any other skill that we have, when we practice our skill, we get better at it. So forgiveness is for ourselves. It sounds very cheesy, but it's so true. And so with that, I want to start with the myths about forgiveness. One is, if I forgive that person, then I'm letting them off the hook. That could not be any less true. I really have to say that again. Forgiving someone is not letting them off the hook. Forgiving someone is forgiving them for yourself so you can grow beyond where you are. And we'll get into a little bit about resentments here in a little bit, but resentments hold us down, they hold us back. And so the whole point to forgiveness is living a healthier and happier life. And so the number one myth is that forgiveness lets people off the hook and they don't have to be responsible for their behavior. The second one is that you can't forgive someone unless they apologize to you, unless they own their mistake. Well, quite frankly, that's putting a lot of your power onto someone else and giving your power away. So I'd like to reframe that by saying, if you forgive someone, you're actually taking your power back. You're not giving it away. And then the third myth is that forgiveness is not possible. I've known many people that have forgiven things that they never thought that they'd ever be able to forgive, and really work through those and understand and process and come out happier and healthier. So what does forgiveness look like? First and foremost, let's start with the 5 W's. The first one is who. Who was I wronged by? Who do I feel wronged by? And I want you to think for a minute. Think on something that you're holding on to, or something that you may have a resentment or you feel upset with someone for. And I want you to think specifically of that person. Who is it? And then after you can picture that person in your mind, I want you to ask yourself, what happened? What was the scenario? What was the circumstance? And maybe this is about yourself. Maybe the person that you're having a hard time forgiving is yourself. That happens. That's very common, actually. So, okay, if I have a hard time forgiving myself, what am I even upset with myself about? What am I upset with somebody else about? It could be a person, it could be an entity, it could be a group of people, but what is that? Really honing in on that. And then the second part to what am I actually feeling? A lot of times the answer to that initially is anger or resentment. And what I want you to explore a little bit deeper in this moment is what's underneath that anger. Usually anger is a secondary emotion, meaning we feel something else and anger helps us cover it up or hide it. Anger is a very powerful emotion because it gives us a rush of adrenaline. It feels like we're more powerful. We're not as vulnerable when we're angry. So what's underneath that anger? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it jealousy? Disappointment? Pain? Am I hurt? Did I get hurt by this person? And once you can identify who it was that you're upset about, what the situation is, and I'm talking an isolated situation. We'll get into if it's a pattern of behavior here in one of the other W's. But what is the situation or scenario? And what am I feeling? What am I actually feeling? Naming your feelings, identifying your feelings is really, really important so you can work towards forgiveness. Then I want you to identify what is my perception of the incident. When we look at it that way, we understand that my perception isn't necessarily the other person's perception. Maybe we perceive things differently. There's those lots of images that you can find that one person sees one thing and another person sees it a completely different way. One of them more recently that I saw, just kind of humorous, is there's a number on the ground. One person is standing on one side of it, another person is standing on the other side of it, and they're arguing over it's the number 6 or it's the number 9. Well, the reality is it is a 6 from one angle and one perspective, and it's a 9 from the other angle and the other perspective. So what is my perception of what happened? And what is this trying to teach me? Everything we go through in life, good, bad, ugly, they are all transactions or incidences that happen, and we can learn from all of them. So what is this trying to teach me? Then we get to the where. Number 3, the where. Where am I feeling this emotion? Some people get a tightness in their chest. Some people get a hot flash down from their neck all the way down their spine. Other people get it in their stomach. Some people feel tense throughout their whole body. Some people have racing thoughts and tunnel vision where they really can only see just what's right in front of them, and they realize like their peripheral vision is not working at the moment. And so where is this affecting you in your body? Our bodies are really important to our emotional responses because we generally feel our emotions in our bodies before we even know in our brain that we're experiencing it. That's usually our first indicator. And then the 4th one is when. When did this occur? Did this happen yesterday? Did this happen last week? Is this a reoccurring pattern with the same person? Is it a reoccurring pattern with many people in your life? And so I like to assess that because it's really important to understand what am I doing and how can I make this right? We'll get to the how here in a minute. But who, what, where, when, and then why? Why is this happening to me right now? Really assessing what am I supposed to learn? Why am I experiencing this? And how am I going to grow through it? I also want to add one more W in there, the weight of the situation. It doesn't even have to be a big event that happened. It could be something relatively small. And a story that comes to mind is a teacher or a student in a class, and you have a bottle of water. And it's a half-empty bottle of water, not very heavy. You hold it out in front of you, and initially it's not very heavy at all. But the longer you hold it, the heavier it gets. Your muscles get fatigued, your arm might start to shake because it gets heavier and heavier. And that is a good story that represents what resentments do for us. When we hold on to things, we need to work through. If we don't work through them, they become heavier and heavier on us. So what is the weight of the situation? Is it a relatively small situation, but I'm making it a bigger deal than what it actually is? Well, maybe I need to address that. So that way I'm not holding on to it for a week, a month, 5 years, 20 years. It does happen. And then over time, it just compounds and it gets heavier and heavier. So how am I going to be able to set that down? And then that gets me to the how. How can I use this to understand myself better? How can I use this information? How is this serving me? Sometimes holding resentments has served us in the past to set boundaries with people, not see them anymore, limit our contact with them. And that has served us very well. Is it still serving you, is what I want to ask you. Is this a situation where you need to have a tough conversation? Tough conversations are not easy, but the longer you put off having them, the worse the situation gets. And sometimes it's a story that we have in our head, a script that we have in our head, and that's why we're not able to process through it. No, I'm not going to go have that conversation because that person's not going to listen to me anyway. Well, do you know that for a fact? Have you tried? And have you tried again? Sometimes it's setting a boundary with someone, and a physical boundary, an emotional boundary. Maybe it is, I don't see you for 4 hours at Christmas or at my birthday or at a work event. Sometimes it's, I will see that I'm okay being around this person for about 45 minutes and then I reach my max and I need to separate at that point to be healthiest for myself. And then I also want to bring up here in the how can I adjust my expectations? Oftentimes when we have expectations of other people, especially unspoken expectations of other people, they really cannot live up to those expectations. So really reassessing, what am I expecting of this person, and is that appropriate? Or do I need to share that with them? So now we'll move on to the tips and some things that you can do to process it. After you know the who, what, where, when, why, the weight of the situation, and how this is impacting you, how you can learn from it, let's move on to the tips. First and foremost, empathy. Empathizing with that person. What can you learn from them? What can you learn from the situation? Put yourself in their shoes. How would you respond if you were in their situation? That's not to say that they respond the same way that you would. You may have handled it much differently. But empathy, understanding where somebody's coming from, doesn't make anything okay, does not make it okay, but it helps us process through it. Number 2, if it's appropriate, schedule a time with them to talk about it. Scheduling a time allows us to, 1, know that it's coming up, and 2, get their buy-in to meet up and get together. And then we also invite them to have the conversation. Hey, I would love to invite you to have this conversation about what happened last weekend. That gives them the opportunity to join the conversation, to know that you're having a talk about what had happened. We're very good at sweeping things under the rug and not really addressing them until they become this really, really big deal. So I strongly recommend that even if small things are happening, but they're still weighing on you 24 hours later, that's a conversation to probably schedule and invite someone to have with you. Number 3, you share your perspective with them and identify it as that. This is my perception. This is from my perspective. I really would like to understand it from your perspective. So is it okay if I share first? You get their buy-in, get them to agree to that, hopefully, and then you get to share, and then listen with intent to understand to what their perspective is. And when we can hear another person's perspective, it also helps us with that number 1 thing of having empathy, seeing the world through their lens. It's very helpful when we're working on forgiveness. Number 4, take time to process. We live in a world of instant gratification where we want an answer right away. You know, it's almost, do you forgive me or not? Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to come across that way. And it's like, well, I didn't ask you to kind of brush it off. Maybe I need time to process what you said, and maybe you need some time to process what I said. Let's have a follow-up. Let's talk maybe tomorrow or next week after we've had some time to think through it. Because more than likely, this was not done, hopefully, more than likely it's not done maliciously. We hurt people without even knowing it. And those are small kind of nicks or small wounds, but those do add up. It's like that water bottle that you're holding and holding and holding and holding. It's very, very heavy. And the water bottle itself is not heavy, but the time that you hold on to it becomes very heavy. And number 5, own what is in your control. I can own how I behaved or how I responded, but sometimes we don't even know. I may have rolled my eyes when you said something to me and I was not even aware of that. That's a blind spot for me. So me being able to share with you my experience, you sharing your perception with me, I'm able to say, wow, I did not even realize that I rolled my eyes at you and that it came across that way and hurt you in that way. So thank you for sharing that with me. I can be more aware now when I'm having a conversation like that that I'm not rolling my eyes, or at least ask other people to make me aware too. Hey, if you notice I'm rolling my eyes in a conversation, please call me out on it. I don't want to do that, because non-verbally I'm sending a message of whether it be disrespect, or I don't care, or I don't think that's relevant, not important, whatever that might be. And so I want to leave you with this, because I think it's really it was a very helpful quote for me when I started learning about forgiveness and working through my own stuff. And it's from Tony Robbins. And I love this. He says, if you're going to blame other people, and this is primarily, he talks about his mother in this way, if you're going to blame them for all the shit, then you better blame them for all the good too, because it made you who you are. And I love that, because we go through things, hard things, and that's sometimes when we learn the most about ourselves. But if we carry around this bag of resentment, or that water bottle, or a backpack full of rocks all the time because we have all these resentments, then we're not able to get to the point of forgiveness. An exercise that I've done with clients in the past is carrying around a bag of potatoes. And potatoes, over time, you write a resentment on them, on each one of them, and then you put it in a bag. I like to use clear, plastic, sturdy, thick bags for this exercise. And this is treatment with clients who are there for a month or two, quite an extended period of time, but they have to carry that bag with them everywhere. It sleeps in bed with them, it goes to the bathroom with them, it goes to all their groups, it goes to dinner, lunch, breakfast, everything. Well, the bag gets extremely heavy over time. And what happens to potatoes when they are just not used for periods of time? They rot and they get very smelly and they're really gross. And that's kind of a representation of what's happening on the inside when we hold on to those resentments. We don't forgive people, because we're really, really hurting ourselves when we do that. And I wanted to wrap up there. I appreciate you listening today, and I hope that you can identify an area or someone in your life that you need to work on forgiving. And with that, you can identify how it's serving you or not serving you anymore, who it is, what happened, where you feel that in your body, when, why, and how. So thank you for listening, and tune in next week for the next episode of Lift Your Future.